The United States Special Envoy for Detainees confirmed direct talks with Hamas. The European Union welcomes the Arab Recovery and Reconstruction Plan adopted at the Emergency Arab Summit in Cairo. And Syria's interim leader Ahmed al-Shara pledges to hold those responsible for recent violent clashes accountable. It's exactly 10 p.m. Cairo local time and you're watching Qnews. We begin today's bulletin with the latest developments in Gaza. US Special Envoy Baller has confirmed that the United States conducts to Israeli media. Baller revealed that President Donald Trump authorized the move after mediating negotiations between Israel and Hamas reached a deadlock. Israel's dismissing concerns over the UN decision to engage directly with Hamas. An Israeli negotiation team is traveling to Qatar today as mediators work to revive Gaza's ceasefire talks. Earlier, Mr. Benjamin Netanyahu confirmed that the delegation would be sent to Doha in an effort to advance negotiation. This comes after a Hamas delegation met with the to discuss the phase of the ceasefire agreement. The first phase of the deal ended on March the 1st, following 6 weeks of the exchange, which included the release of 25 Israeli detainees held in Gaza in exchange for 1,800 Palestinians in Israeli prisons. Israel has stated that it is cutting off its electricity supply to Gaza, disrupting a desalination plant that provides drinking water to parts of the territory. Hamas has condemned the move, calling it part of Israel's starvation policy. Last week, Israel also suspended the supply of the goods to the territory, home to more than 2 million Palestinians, a measure that was called reminiscent of the siege imposed in the early days of the war. Israeli Finance Minister Bezalel Smotrich has announced that Israel is establishing a large immigration administration following US President Donald Trump's proposal to forcibly relocate hundreds of thousands of Palestinians from the Gaza Strip. Smotrich defended the plan, calling it the only realistic path to peace and security, adding that investing in immigration incentives would cost Israel far less than continued conflict. Trump sparked regional shockwaves last month by suggesting that Gaza's roughly 2 million Palestinians be resettled in other countries. He proposed that the United States take control of Gaza and redevelop it into a Middle Eastern Riviera. Gaza residents are hoping that the Emergency Arab Summit in Egypt will counter US and Israeli plans from their displacements. Held in Egypt's new administrative capital, the summit brought together Arab leaders to discuss Gaza's reconstruction. The leaders adopted Egypt's plan to rebuild Gaza without displacing its residents. Egyptian President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi outlined a phased approach, beginning with humanitarian aid, followed by a full-scale reconstruction effort. The European Union has welcomed the Arab Recovery and Reconstruction Plan adopted by the Emergency Arab Summit in Cairo. The Union called the plan a serious basis for Gaza's future and will discuss with its Arab partners. It emphasized the need for a solid political and security framework for reconstruction and peace. The EU pledged continued support for the Palestinian Authority to help it prepare to govern Gaza. The United Nations Special Rapporteur on the occupied Palestinian territory, Francesca Albanese, has warned that Israel's decision to cut off electricity to Gaza has left desalination stations non-functional, cutting off access to clean water. She also criticized countries that have yet to impose sanctions or an arms embargo on Israel, saying they're aiding and assisting Israel in the commission of one of the most preventable genocides in history. Human Rights Watch reports that Israel has already blocked most water access for Palestinians in Gaza, including shutting off down pipelines and destroying solar panels. Far-right Israeli politician Itamar Ben-Gvir and his Ozma Yehudet party have introduced a bill in the Knesset seeking to annul key agreements with the Palestinian Liberation Organization, PLO, including the Oslo Accords, the Hebron Protocol, and the Wye River Memorandum. Ben-Gvir stated that the bill aims to restore the situation to its pre-agreement status, allowing Israel to reclaim lands transferred under these deals. The proposal also seeks to repeal laws enforcing these agreements and grants the Prime Minister authority to nullify their outcomes. The Oslo Accords, signed in 1993, established a framework for Palestinian self-rule and mutual recognition between Israel and the PLO. The Hebron Protocol of the 1997 facilitated the redeployment of Israeli forces in Hebron, dividing the city into areas of Palestinian and Israeli control, while the 1998 Wye River Memorandum outlined further Israeli withdrawals from the West Bank and enhanced security cooperation. Palestinians in Khan Yunis are expressing hope for successful negotiations between Hamas and Israel, calling for an end to the war in the Gaza Strip. A Hamas delegation has met with Egyptian mediators over the past 2 days, reaffirming the readiness to negotiate the implementation of the deal's second phase. Meanwhile, Israel has announced that it is sending negotiators to Doha today for ceasefire talks. Palestinians in Khan Yunis say shortages of basic necessities are worsening after Israel blocked humanitarian aid from entering Gaza. Residents are struggling to access food, with long queues forming outside bakeries, many waiting for hours just to receive a bag of bread. Israel has imposed a total blockade on all goods entering the enclave, insisting that Hamas release the remaining 59 detainees held in Gaza before any negotiations to end the war can begin. Israeli occupation forces have intensified their military measures at the Beit Fureik checkpoint east of Nablus and El Morabba checkpoint to the south. Israeli forces tightened measures at checkpoints, conducting searches and ID checks, causing heavy traffic and forcing some to break their Ramadan fast there. Nablus remains under restrictions, with the main Hawra road blocked since October the 7th, 2023. The Israeli Israeli aggression on the northern West Bank province of Tulkarm has entered its 42nd consecutive day. Israeli forces deployed reinforcements to Nablus and its refugee camps and in Tulkarm refugee camp. Nearly all residents have been displaced in widespread destruction, with homes turned into military outposts. In Nur Shams camp, Israeli soldiers installed surveillance cameras on seized homes, while explosions and heavy damage continue. Over 9,000 residents have been displaced from Nur Shams and 12,000 others from Tulkarm. Families of Israeli detainees held in Gaza have set up protest tents demanding action for their release. The demonstrators spent the night outside the base, which houses Israeli army headquarters and the defense ministry. Meanwhile, Israel and Hamas have signaled preparations for the next phase of ceasefire negotiations as mediators push to extend the fragile 42-day truce that began in January. And now we move on to the latest developments in Syria. Syria's interim leader Ahmed al-Shara has pledged to track down those responsible for recent violent clashes, vowing to hold anyone who overstepped their authority accountable. In a televised speech and a statement on social media, Shara accused Assad loyalists and unnamed foreign powers of attempting to incite unrest. His office announced the formation of an independent committee to investigate the clashes and killings by both sides. Syria's interim president Ahmed al-Shara has issued a decree to form a high-level committee for maintaining civil peace. The committee will communicate directly with residents in the coastal region to listen to their concerns. The committee also aims to ensure the Syrian people's security, stability and national unity during this sensitive time. The foreign ministers of Syria, Turkey, Jordan, Iraq and Lebanon have agreed to intensify efforts in the fight against Daesh in Syria. Delegations from these countries have arrived in the Jordanian capital Amman for talks focused on security cooperation, counter-terrorism and measures against organized crime. The discussions also covered broader regional issues as Syria engages with its neighboring countries on key security concerns. Diplomats have stated that the United States and Russia have requested a closed-door meeting at the United Nations Security Council to discuss the escalating violence in Syria. This comes as the Syrian presidency announced the formation of an independent commission to investigate the clashes, focusing on violations against civilians and accountability. The United Nations has urged all parties in Syria to immediately halt hostilities to protect civilians' infrastructure and humanitarian operations in line with the international humanitarian law and human rights regulations. The appeal came in a joint statement from the United Nations Resident Coordinator and Humanitarian Coordinator for Syria, Adham Abu Mullah, and the United Nations Regional Humanitarian Coordinator for the Syrian crisis. The UN warns the continued violence threatens humanitarian efforts and the safety of millions affected by the conflict. Jordan's first Deputy Speaker of the House of Representatives, Mustafa al-Qaswani, has emphasized that Syria's unity and the stability of its people are crucial neighboring countries in the entire region. He also highlighted that Syria's instability would have significant repercussions on its neighbors. Al-Khaswani also stated that the current developments in Syria stem from external interventions, especially by Israel. This came at the high hosted by Jordan, combating terrorism and facilitating the return of refugees. Hezbollah leader Naim Qassem has affirmed that the ceasefire agreement with Israel is explicit, with no secret clauses or hidden terms, and is part of UN Resolution 1701, which mandates Israel's withdrawal from Lebanon. Qassem stated that while Hezbollah could have targeted any location, it focused on military objectives. He emphasized that the resistance continues and any Israeli occupation would face opposition from the army, people, and resistance. The United Nations Special Coordinator for Lebanon, Jeanine Anis, Plaschart is in Israel and is set to meet with senior Israeli officials. The meeting will focus on implementing the ceasefire agreement of the November 26, 2024 and the UN Security Council Resolution 1701. He emphasized the importance of maintaining security and stability along the Blue Line, urging all parties to refrain from altering the situation on the ground and to work towards the solutions outlined in Resolution 1701 to prevent further escalation. And now we move on to Riham Morsi in our newsroom. Riham.
Thank you so much, Rana. We move on to the economic news. President Javier Milei, Argentina implemented major economic changes focusing on austerity, deregulation, and reducing government spending. The economy shrank in early 2024, grew 3.9% in quarter four, aided by 80.2% rebound in agriculture. The Argentine peso strengthened by 44.2% against the US dollar, boosting average wages to $990. Argentina paid off $4.3 billion in debt and investor confidence soared, pushing bonds prices higher. The forecast predicts economic growth of 3.5% to 5.5% in 2025 as inflation stabilizes and investments increase. Global markets are experiencing heightened volatility due to escalating trade tensions and concerns over potential recessionary impacts. US President Donald Trump has declined to rule out the possibility of a recession this year, citing potential short-term turbulence from his economic policies, including new tariffs and regulatory changes. The uncertainty has led to declines in major stocks indices, with the S&P 500 on the Nasdaq future down 0.5% and 0.6% respectively. In the United Kingdom, companies are slowing down their hiring process due to the subdued economic outlook and rising wage costs. Surveys from the KPMG and the Recruitment and Employment Confederation indicate a marked decline in the placement of both permanent and temporary roles in February. Additionally, job losses have increased, with more job seekers entering the market, curbing overall pay pressures. Starting salaries have pace in 4 years, and upcoming increases in employer national insurance contributions and the minimum wage are set to further escalate labor costs. And now back to you, Rana, in the studio.
Thank you so much, Rahim, and that brings us to the end of our bulletin. Here's what we have been covering. The US Special Envoy for Detainees confirmed direct talks with Hamas. The European Union welcomes the Arab Recovery and Reconstruction Plan adopted at the Emergency Arab Summit in Cairo. And Syria's interim leader Ahmed al-Shara pledges to hold those responsible for recent violent clashes accountable. This concludes our news bulletin for the hour. Don't forget to follow Qnews on YouTube, Facebook, X, Instagram and TikTok at QNewsEG to stay informed. Thank you very much for watching and stay tuned for more coming up on Qnews.